So, what we know about Spring Boot startup parent? Okay, Spring Boot startup parent, I have discussed a little bit when we started this particular series, right? I told you guys that Spring Boot startup parent will help you to do the version management. So you as a developer doesn't have to worry about, what kind of versions that you have to pull in for different dependencies. You just have to know the artifact name of the project, and the version management will be taken care by the Spring Boot startup parent. Okay, but the next question from me is going to be how Spring Boot startup parent is just doing all the version management. What about if I as a developer is not satisfied about the version the Spring Boot startup parent is providing to me? What about if I want to override the defaults of the Spring Boot startup parent and I just want to go for some of the newer version or some older version according to my choice? Then how can I do that particular things? And also, let me tell you that if you are a developer moving from Spring MVC to Spring Boot, or if you're someone who is really new to Spring Boot, then after this video, you're going to be appreciating the Spring Boot startup parent, and also you're going to be appreciating the Spring Boot startup web MVC dependency that we have added in our project. How? I'm not going to tell you right now. You have to watch the complete video for that. Okay, so guys, my name is Avilas. You are watching Selenium Express, and this is the 5th video of my Hello Spring Boot series, where we are discussing about the features and the beautiful features, not features, beautiful features that the Spring Boot framework is providing us and how it is rescuing we the developers. Okay, so let's just get started and let's roll the intro. Now you might have a very important question that, okay, Vilas, I understand the work of the startup parent. The startup parent is helping me to manage the version, and all my dependency versions that I'm putting over here is getting managed by this version thing that I'm putting with my startup parent. And that is absolutely fine. But what about if I'm not happy with the version? For an example, if I see here inside the Hello Spring Boot application, the Java version which is used over here is Java 17. What about if I'm not happy about it? I don't want to use Java 17. I want to use Java 19 or 20 or 21 or 30. Then how can I do it? So if you're going to go to your Spring Boot startup parent again, so this is the Spring Boot startup parent. Okay. It also have another parent. We'll go to this parent later. If you can drag down from here, I'll show you something here. Look at the properties that is mentioned. And here they have a Java version which is defined as 17. And that's why my project version is 17 right now. What about if I want to change it to 19? Then how can I do it? So what you can do here, you can just copy this Java version tag from here. And if you want to override this particular version from your Spring Boot startup parent, if you're not happy about the version that you have, that this guy is basically managing for you, you can just do this thing. You can come out of this parent. You can just write the same properties tag one more time, properties, and here you change the Java version. You override that particular thing. I'm doing a copy paste here and I'm writing a 19 here. Okay, so I'm changing my Java version right now. Let me just terminate this particular program for a minute. Let me just do a Control S and let's see if it is changing right now. It's not yet changed. Let me just do a Maven update. So I'm going to do right click, Maven, update project, and force update, do OK. See, it has been changed to Java 19. So if I am not happy about the startup parent version, then you can override the same properties, just like I've overridden the resources properties from here. So here I have copied these properties, and inside the properties and properties tag, I have written this as Java 19 inside my own pom.xml file, or Hello Spring Boot pom.xml file, which is the pom.xml file of this particular project. Just add this particular properties. So as I have said your Spring Boot startup parent is basically managing every versions for you. And if you want to look into that, you can go inside this and you can see the Spring Boot startup parent is having another parent, and that is Spring Boot dependencies. And if you're going to go to this Spring Boot dependency parent, which is the parent of Spring Boot startup parent, now here you can see a lot of interesting thing. Inside the properties, now you can see a lot of versions, like what will be the ActiveMQ version, what will be the AspectJ version, what is Cassandra version, what is Commons DBCP, which is a connection pool version, what will be your S2 version, what is your Hibernate version, what is your Hikari CP version, what is your Jakarta version, what is your Jackson version, what is your Spring version, what is your Kafka version, what is your Maven versions. Every versions you can see like it has been mentioned over here. What is your Selenium version, what is going to be your Spring versions for different project it has, what is the Spring security version, everything has been mentioned over here. So if you are like, okay Vilas, now how basically the Spring is knowing to what version to pull. So whenever you are writing this parent, and whenever you are writing this Spring Boot startup parent, whenever you are mentioning the version over here, so this version is basically pulling in all the different jars which is needed, and also the versions are mentioned by the Spring Boot developer team. And that's why you can see inside the Maven dependency, you can see that right now I'm having the Spring Web MVC version is 6.0. Why the 6.0 of the Spring Web MVC has been pulled in? Why not 5.x or 3.x? So how basically that happened? Because the version that I have mentioned, the Spring Boot 3, now this is the Spring Boot 3.1 version. So it's a 3.x version. So the Spring Boot 3 internally uses the Spring Framework 6. And now when we mention this version internally pulled in this jar. And how exactly this version? Let me just close everything so that you can see it in one place. So this is the pom.xml file. Let me close everything and let me show you. Let me just collapse everything. Go to your project, go to pom.xml file, and right here, I want to know what is the version of Spring Boot Starter Web and how it is getting managed, and how basically right now inside the Maven dependency we have the Web MVC version of 6.0.10. And for this, let me copy this artifact name, copy this, go to the Spring Boot Starter parent and expand this. Let's zoom this a little bit. Go to the parent of Spring Boot Starter parent, and now here all the versions are getting managed inside the properties. So let me just look for, and if you're gonna scroll down, you can see all the different dependencies are over here. So right here, do a Control F and paste your dependency name that we have copied from there, which is Spring Boot Starter Web. Let me do a find, and you can see over here, there is an exact match, Spring Boot Starter Web. And what is the version has mentioned over here? 3.1.1. So the Spring Boot Starter parent is internally managing the version. So here we didn't put any versions for our Spring Boot Starter Web, but internally it is using this version only, 3.1.1. And this is the proof of that. And if you're gonna go inside the Spring Boot Starter Web version that you have over here, if you go inside this, you can see that it is pulling in the Spring Web MVC. And look at the version of Spring Web MVC over here. It is 6.0.10. And if you're going to see the Spring Web MVC version here, it is 6.0.10. And this is how the Spring Boot Starter parent internally is managing all your versions. And that's the magic which is happening. Okay, here is the challenge for you. Let's say I'm going to add a third-party library to my application, and you have to guess what version it is going to use. For an example, if I'll go here in my project right now, I will add a Spring Boot starter. So I'll go to Spring and add starters, and I'm going to add a library here, any third-party library like Kafka. I'm sure that you might have heard about Apache Kafka, or you might have heard about Lombok, right? Let me just add Lombok here, okay? Lombok is if you don't know about Lombok, that's fine. Just think like this is a third-party library which is going to help developers during development, and it is going to help us to get rid of unnecessary getters and setters. We don't have to write getters and setters unnecessarily in our project. So I'm going to add Lombok to my project right now. And once I am done putting the Lombok here in my project, I will go to the pom.xml file and I'll show you the Lombok dependency that I have added. Okay, so here is my Lombok dependency that I have added right now. Now you have to tell me what is going to be the version of the Lombok. Have I put the Lombok version here? No, the version for the Lombok is not available. I don't have anything called version over here, and I have not specified the version here. So what is going to be the version that Spring Boot is going to pull in for me? Okay, let's find it out. So if I'll go to the Spring Boot starter parent, the Spring Boot starter parent will have the Spring Boot dependencies as another parent. Let's go over there. And if I'll scroll here, inside this properties, I'll be finding the Lombok version. Am I finding Lombok here? Here we go. This is the version of the Lombok, right? Now let me just see one thing. I will just copy this Lombok version and let's see where it is getting used. I'll just do a Control C and Control F and Control V here. Obviously it's pasted. Let's just see this Lombok version where it is getting used. Do a find. Okay. And here you can see it is getting used over here. Dependency of Lombok, and the version is is getting inherited right now from this properties that you have seen in the properties thing. Do a Control F again, go backward and do a find, and this is the Lombok version 1.18.28. okay, now let me come back to my pom.xml file. Okay, so I'm sure that the version for this is going to be 1.8.28. is that the one? 1.18.28. I'm sorry about it. Let me come to my pom.xml file, do a Control S. Now just come over here, do a maven update. So maven update project, it is going to pull in the Lombok dependency from the maven central, and the version it is going to pull in, you already know about it. It's going to be this version which is mentioned inside the Spring Boot starter parent. Let's see that. If I go to the maven dependencies, let's go for the Lombok version. Can you find Lombok here? There we go. It's 1.18.28. I'm sure right now you understand the importance of the Spring Boot starter parent. So just remember that the Spring Boot starter parent not only managing your Spring versions, it is managing different libraries or different other third-party tools versions like Kafka, JUnit, JSON, JT, Jersey. It is managing a lot of different versions. So we as a developer don't have to worry about the compatibility, and we don't have to worry about in Spring Boot version 3, what is the dependency that we should be using of Xjar, what version we should be using of that particular dependency. All these things has been taken care by the Spring Boot team, and you just need to make one thing sure that you are just adding the Spring Boot starter parent jar and mention the Spring Boot version over here that you want to use. And accordingly, all the internal versions of all the third-party tool will be managed by Spring Boot only, and you would really don't have to specify the version. Just write the artifact that you want to use for the project name that you want to use, and that's it. Everything else will be managed by Spring Boot. Alright, now I'll give you another example how Spring Boot is doing some magic, and how basically Spring Boot is helping us to make our life easy as a developer. Here is another instance. Let's say if you're gonna go to the pom.xml file, okay, you already know that you have a Spring Boot starter wave right here. This dependency we're using because we're building a web application. If we are going to the dependency hierarchy, and if I'm gonna collapse everything, and if I'm gonna expand this wave, we know that the web MVC is coming with the Spring Boot starter wave. As I said, Spring Boot starter wave is a bulk of dependency or a collection of dependency which is going to help us to build web application in real time. So the web and web MVC are the Spring jars which is going to help us to create the web application. We understood about the Spring Boot starter Tomcat. The starter Tomcat is also a collection of Tomcat jars which is going to basically help us to get an embedded Tomcat. So if we're going to expand it, these are all the Tomcat related jars which are embedded with this Spring Boot starter Tomcat dependency, which is an inbuilt dependency with Spring Boot starter wave. Okay, so Spring Boot Starter Web contains a dependency called Spring Boot Starter Tomcat, and Spring Boot Starter Tomcat is bringing in all these jars which are needed to start a Tomcat server. So that's all about the Spring Boot Starter Tomcat. So I think we understood about these three dependency. And you know, the Spring Boot Starter dependency is basically a collection of some dependency which is going to help us to start the Spring Framework application. Like you can see, like the Spring Boot Starter is bringing in the Spring Core jar, which is going to help us to do some of the Spring Core related work, like the IOC container, all the Spring Core feature related thing we're going to be getting out of the Spring Core jar. And Snake YAML is a YAML compiler. I have already told you that in my resources folder, I have created a YAML file, and to basically write YAML code inside our Spring Boot project, this YAML compiler, which is Snake YAML, is going to help us. And this Spring Boot auto configuration, as I said, it is going to help us to do a lot of auto configuration. Like for this project, I have not, created any dispatcher servlet because the dispatcher servlet has been automatically configured. For this project, I have not set up any web server. The web server and everything has automatically configured for us. And the Spring Boot auto configure jar is going to help us for the auto configuration feature. The Spring Boot auto configure jar is going to do a bunch of auto configuration for the developers to get things started quickly. Okay, like that, we have some other jars are here as well. Like for logging, we have some logging jars, and we don't want to get into this right now. You understand that the Spring Boot starter jar is helping us to start with the Spring Boot application. It's kind of a starter package which is having some logging jar, some collection of auto configuration jar. It is having the Spring Core jar. It is having all the basic thing to get started with a Spring Boot application. But it also has something called a Spring Boot Starter JSON. And why we are having the Spring Boot Starter JSON jar here, which is coming along with the Spring Boot Starter Web. Okay, the Spring Boot Starter Web is also having the Spring Boot Starter JSON. And what is the use of the Spring Boot Starter JSON? Let me tell you that, so that you can understand that how this Spring Boot Starter Web is helping you in real time. Okay guys, so I want to give you a very simple task. Okay, so the task is, you remember last time we have created another application with Spring, the Hello World application with Spring. The only difference that we have made here, this application is not a Spring Boot application. We have created this as a Spring application, right? So here also, if I am not wrong, we have created a Hello World controller and we have created a Hello World endpoint, right? Which is basically returning us this string, which is good, which is working good. We have tested it already. But right now, let's say my requirement has changed. Here in this endpoint I have created inside my Hello World Spring App project. Just look at the dependency and just be sure that this is not a Spring Boot project. There is no Spring Boot starter parent, as you can see over here. And you can see all this dependency I have only added by myself. These are Web MVC dependencies, Spring Context and Spring Core dependency. All this dependency I have added by myself because this is not a Spring Boot project. So now let's say here in this project, this is my normal Spring MVC project. In this normal Spring MVC project, I have this controller, Hello World controller. Now let's say I have a requirement. I don't want to return a string directly. Rather, I want to return an object. Let me say that I will have a class called Hello World here. And inside this Hello World class, let's say I have a couple of properties. Let's say private string word1 and private string word2. Let's say I'll be basically configuring couple of word, and I will hit control 1 here and create getter setter for both this word1 and word2. Let's say I want to set some word1 and word2 and I want to return it as an object. So let's say I'll go to my controller, okay, Hello World controller. Instead of returning this string, what I will do, I will create my Hello World object. Let's say Hello World, and I'll say Hello World is equal to new Hello World. And right now I will set the couple of words with this. Let's say set word1. Let's say my word1 is this. I'll copy from this string, Control X, paste it here, and I will also copy the word2. Let's say hello world dot set word2, and the what2 is going to be, let's say this. This is a string, this is not a word, but let's say I have a couple of things set like this, and I want to return this entire object right now, and this object has couple of properties, and I want to return this object. So this is something that I want to return instead of a string right now. Let's say I have changed the way my hello world endpoint was configured. Now what I am expecting that when somebody is going to hit this endpoint, I want Spring to return this object, and this object will be returned as a JSON format, right? So hello world and welcome to my first Spring app. It will be returned as a JSON format. That is what I'm expecting. Let's see if this is happening or not. So if I'll go to my hello world Spring app, this is not a Spring Boot app, so I cannot directly run this. So what I will do, I will go ahead and I'll deploy this on a server. Let me just deploy this on an external server like Tomcat, and let's see if I'm able to get the things. Let's just do Control S over here, and let me just run this on the server. And yeah, so right now, what is the dispatcher servlet endpoint that we have configured here? So if I'll go to my initializer, the dispatcher servlet endpoint here is myapp.com. So my URL need to start with myapp.com. So I'll just say myapp.com/, and you're gonna be just doing one more thing. I'll go to my controller, and my controller is hello world controller. Let me copy this hello world controller, this endpoint from the controller, and paste it over here. And let me just try doing enter. And you can see right now I'm getting a 406 not acceptable error. And now basically what it is saying that the target resource does not have a current representation that will be acceptable to a user agent. And if I'll go to my server log, I can see there is some exception here, and it is saying that HTTP media type not acceptable exception. So not acceptable representation. So it is saying that, okay, the endpoint that you are hitting, it need to expose you this object, but the server actually doesn't know how to expose this object. I as a developer think if it is a REST endpoint, then it need to give back the response in JSON format. This object data it has, it need to be converted to a JSON format, and that it need to be exposed to the outer world. But my Spring application, the Spring MVC application that I have written, it doesn't understand that. So how to fix it out? Let me go to the pom.xml file and let me add couple of dependencies over here. So to convert my object that I have for the hello world, this hello world object I have created over here, if I want to convert the data that I have inside the object to the JSON format or to the respective JSON format, then what I have to do, I have to add couple more jars or couple more dependency. One is going to be Jackson core. Okay, let me go for the Jackson core dependency, and let me just choose the Jackson core, and let me go to the 2.15.2. Let me copy this dependency, go back to your pom.xml file of your this project, hello world Spring project, open this pom.xml file, and I will be adding the Jackson core over here. Okay, and I will also have the Jackson data bind. So I'll just go here and just go for the Jackson data bind. So this Jackson jars are going to help me to bind my Java object to the JSON related string I can just generate out of it. So let me see, like, if it is happening. So I'm adding the Jackson core and Jackson data bind, this couple of jars. Now I'll just do a Control S. I will just stop my server. I'll do a map and update project. So I'll just go ahead and do a map and update project. I'll just do a force update, and I'll get my Jackson core. I'll get my Jackson core and Jackson data bind dependency over here to my Spring MVC project, because in my controller, I want to expose this object to the outer world in form of JSON, and I want that to happen. So I'm adding this couple of dependency. So now once it is done, I will go ahead and I will just do run on server, and I'll try to deploy this particular project one more time to my server. And once that is done, okay, I will come over here and I'll just say myapp.com/hello world. Let's see if it is working right now. Now also it is not working, because right now the jars are in place, but to have this conversion, this object need to be converted to JSON. My Java object need to be converted to the JSON object. So I need to have a converter for that. And I don't want to write the converter by myself. I will go to my configuration file that my dispatcher servlet uses. And here I will be basically writing a annotation called enable web MVC. And I'll just do a Control S and let me wait till my project reload my changes. And now it's trying to reload my changes, and the reload is completed right now. And if I'll go over here and do a enter, and now I'm getting my object as a JSON format. And here is the representation of my hello world object that I'm exposing through the REST endpoint. So how much extra work I have done? I, as a developer, went to the Maven repository. I went to the pom.xml file. I have added the Jackson core and the Jackson data bind jar by myself. And also I have done some of the setup in the configuration file that I have written here. And I have added this enable web MVC in my configuration file. And this configuration file will be used by my dispatcher servlet, and the dispatcher servlet will use this configuration file to create my container and will do some setup. And this is the Spring MVC thing. But let's see how we can do the same thing in Spring Boot. Let me close everything. Let me close this. And right now, I will just do one thing. This hello world class that I have written, I will copy it to my Spring Boot project. I'll go to my Spring Boot project, and here in my Spring Boot project, I'll paste this hello world class, and also I'll go to my hello world controller. I'll copy this object creation and all this thing, and I will close this project as well. This MVC project also I'll close it. I'll go to my Spring Boot project. I'll open my controller, and here instead of return a string, I'll just do this exact same thing. I'll import all these classes, and I will return this hello world over here, and I will return this guy over here. Okay, I'm exposing the hello world object directly, and this is my Spring Boot application. Now let me start my Spring Boot application, run as Spring Boot app, and I can directly launch my Spring Boot application. And right now it is running in port number 8085. Let me go to the port number 8085 right now. Let me just open up a new terminal. Let me just do localhost, and let me just go for 8085 port number, and I will just type hello world. What is that URL? Hello, right? Let me just type hello here. And let's just do an enter. And there you go. You don't have to do any kind of setup in Spring Boot when you want to expose any JSON object to the outer world, because Spring knows if you are creating an endpoint over here called /hello, and if you're returning a hello world object, then the Spring Boot knows that you as a developer will be needing the Jackson jars, right? You as a developer will be needing the converter, and all these things are getting set off automatically for you. And if you're going to be looking into your pom.xml file of your Spring Boot, you have only added this Spring Boot starter web dependency. But as I said, it will pull in all the different dependencies that you will be needing as a developer to build a web application. And that's why if you're going to see the dependency hierarchy, now if you're going to collapse everything and look into the jar that you also have something called Spring Boot starter JSON. It also have a starter JSON in a kind of a package. It's a bulk of different Jackson jar. And if you open this up, the Jackson data bind, the Jackson data bind, and the Jackson core. The Jackson core will be, you see, the Jackson data bind is already having the Jackson core. So the Jackson data bind is already there in your application. All right, this dependency is already there. Not only this, there are also some other Jackson jars which will help you along the way. So in the Spring Boot, the starter JSON is already inbuilt. So for the Spring Boot, if you are already having this dependency called Spring Boot Starter Web, not only you can build web application using JSP, Timeleap, Angular, or something else, you can also build RESTful application as well. And all these things is already taken care by the Spring Boot application. And this is what is a beautiful feature, what we call the starter dependency. And the starter web dependency from the Spring Boot is helping you to give you a complete package where you as a developer will not be caring of adding the external dependency in order to develop any application. I hope this is making sense. All right, guys. So I'm actually editing your video, and I'm almost done with editing this particular video. But before I give you this, I feel like I should be asking you a specific question, and I want to just see like how much you remember from the Spring Core lessons that you had previously, right? So I'm going to be asking you a very simple question, and I'll be doing certain stuff over here. Just analyze what I'm doing, and then you have to replicate the same thing with Spring Boot, and you have to examine something and you have to give me an answer, right? So you just watch out what I'm going to do right now. I'll be basically doing some really simple thing. I'll be developing a couple of endpoints, right? But what I'm going to do, I will do it with my Spring MVC application. This is the application where I'm coding all your things with Spring Boot. But right here, I'll be going to this Hello World Spring application that we have developed in our first episode with Spring MVC. So right here, what I'm going to do for your clarity, I'll just open up the pom.xml file. Just want to show you a few things that we have the Spring context jar over here, which is for the Spring Core support. We have the WebMVC and Jakarta Servlet API here for Spring WebMVC support. And we have the faster XML Jackson core and the Jackson data bind over here for the REST API support. So basically, I'm going to create a kind of problem, a scenario, and I want you guys to give me a solution for that particular problem. And I'm sure that very soon I'm going to be having a problem right now, because I'm going to code like a kid right now. So let's just see what I'm going to do. So this is my Spring MVC application. So what I'm going to do, I'll go to my source main Java, and right here inside this application, what I'm going to do, I'll be going to one of my packages over here, and I'll create a new class, a very simple class I'll create. The class name is going to be my friends. Okay. So I'm going to keep all of my friends over here. So first of all, I want Spring to create the object for this class. So I'm going to say component. And here I'm going to be keeping a friend list, which is going to be a list of string, which is going to hold all my friends over here. So I'm going to say list of string. So basically I want to create a friend list, and I want to store all my friends over here. So friend list, okay, right over here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a method called get all my friends. Okay, I want to create a method like this. So what I want to do inside this method, I want to initialize this friend list. So I'm going to do friend list, okay, is equal to new array list, okay, and then I'm going to be keep on adding some of my friends to this list. So I'm going to say friend list dot add, and I'm going to be adding a few value over here. Let's say Sunil, and I'll just copy paste this line for a couple of times, and at last I'm going to return this friend list over here. So I'm going to copy this, paste it over here, and also I'm going to return this list of string over here. This method is right now going to return a list of string. They are my friends, and I'm going to make it a public method. Very simple, very straightforward. Let me just do a control shift F to do formatting, and there you go. That's my simple method that I have. Okay, and one more API method I want to create. Let me just trace this out a little bit. And the second API method that I want to create over here, I want to create a method called get all my friends count. Okay, how many total number of friends that I have. And again, it's very simple. Let's say I have this many number of friends, so I can copy this and I'm going to paste it over here. First, I'm going to initialize my list in this line number 27. And then I'm going to keep on adding again all my buddies over here. They are my friends. They are my buddies. Let's say I cannot live without them, so they have to be over there. So after initializing my list, they are my default friends. They are my go-to friends. Okay. So once I have this thing again, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to be returning the count. So I'm going to say return friend list dot count. Okay, let's say friend list or size. Okay, and this is going to get me a public integer back. So I have this couple of API methods. One is going to get me all of my friends' name, and one is going to get me the total number of friends that I have. So a simple straightforward class that I've created over here. Let me use this class a little bit inside a controller. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a controller over here called friends controller. Okay, look at that, my question is coming. And just because I want to show you this particular scenario, this idea is just pop out in my brain, because this is something that I haven't discussed in the session. So, I'm sitting on my bed right now, putting my webcam over there, and I'm just recording this, out of nowhere. This plan was not there in my mind previously, but yeah, just wanted to recall some of the things, so that you guys also can do some homework, and just let me know in the comment section if you're able to figure it out, what I'm going to do right now, and if you're going to do the same thing in Spring Boot. So before that, let's just come back, and I'm creating my friends controller, which is going to be a REST controller. Let's say inside this REST controller, I'm going to be having an API. The API will be get all friends. Okay. I want to create an endpoint which is going to return all the friends which is available. So let's say for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a reference of my friends over here. So inside this class, I have a couple of API method. I can use one of the API method that I have over here, my friends dot get all my friends, and this is going to return me a list back. So assign statement to a new local variable. Let's say this is going to be my friend list, and I can return this off. So return list. Okay. So I want to return all of my friends over here through this API. So this is a public method. And also I'm going to have a request mapping here, and I'm going to create an endpoint that, okay, expose all of my friends using this endpoint. Let's say friends list. Okay, this is going to get me all the list of the friends that I have. This method is going to return this friend list, and this friend list right now initialized with this array list, and this is what I have inside this friend list, and this is what I'm returning over here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my controller, and quickly let me just do one more thing. I will also create another API method, and this API method is going to help me to get all the count, the number of friends that I have, the count of that. And for that, I'm going to create another API method called friends/count. And what I'm going to do, this is going to return me an integer back. Okay, so here I'm going to call my count method, right? That there is a count method that I have, get all my friends count, and this is going to return me a integer back. So I'm going to say int number of friends, right? Number of friends. Okay, and I can return this up right over here. Okay, all good. So get all friends count, the method name. Okay, so I think my controller is ready. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna run this up. So I'm gonna do right click, run as, and I'm gonna run it on server, because this is not a Spring Boot application. This is a Spring MVC application. So I'm creating a REST endpoint using Spring MVC. This is going to start up my container. So there we go, my container is started. So I'm going to be hitting my endpoint right now. My endpoint is what? My endpoint is this. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to paste it over here. Okay, friends/list, and it is saying it is not available, and 404 error is giving because I do not have the root endpoint, because the dispatcher servlet is right now only going to handle this request whenever it is going to start with the root URI, and the root URI is what? myapp.com. So I'm going to copy this, Control C. This is the endpoint. So don't worry about it. So if you haven't followed the first video, no worries. I'll just go over here and put my root API over here, myapp.com. My URL should start with that, and then I'll be writing friends/list. Do a enter. Okay, so it is just saying my friends is null. Okay, because I might not have auto-word this thing, so I have to make it auto-word so that Spring will initialize this particular object, because I have written component over here, and then once this object will be created, I'll be using all these methods right over here inside my API methods that I have created over here. I'm using this method, right? So this is null, it is saying. So I'm gonna auto-word it. I'll wait for my server to reload the changes. So my server is reloading the changes right now. Okay, all good. So let me just go back one more time and hit this endpoint. Okay, I'm getting all my friends here: Sunil, Soumya, Priya, and Somik, which is really good. So if I want to get the count, so I'm going to say friends/count, and it is saying, okay, I have 4 friends available, which is really good. And now here is the question: when I created this couple of endpoints, do you think, do you smell some bad code practice over here? And of course, I'm sure that you might have smelled it, because if you're gonna see this couple of methods, you can see something fishy, something that I should not do, and something that I'm doing again and again, and which could be avoided by taking this bunch of code to a global place. I think that you are having that sense. If you don't, if you are still not having that clarity, let's say the client is telling me, okay, Vilas, right now you have a couple of API methods. You create another method to create a friend. So what I'm going to do, okay, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to create a friend. So I'm going to say add friend. So what I'm going to do right now, add friend. And what I'm going to do right now, I'll be adding a friend. So I'm going to be taking a friend from here. So I'm going to be saying string friend name that you want to add, and the add method will not do anything. Now I'll be adding a friend, but before I add a friend, I cannot say friend list dot add. If I'm going to do this, then what will happen? Let's say if I'm going to do friend list dot add of a Vilas, then what will happen? Now this add method I'm calling over what? Friend list. Imagine somebody directly call this method, then this friend list is null, right? So null dot add, you're going to be getting null pointer exception. So you have to make sure that you have to initialize this friend list first. And for that, you have to write this line over here again. Okay. And I also told you, whenever I'm creating this list, I should have at least my 4 friends. They are my buddies, right? So I have to also add all this people to the list, right here. Okay, then I can add the other friend that the client want to add over here. So I can just replace this Vilas with the friend name. This would be dynamic right now. So the thing which is wrong over here is that I'm initializing my list over here and adding the bunch of friends which are kind of the default friends for me, and I'm doing it in all of my API method, and this is a problematic thing, and I should not be doing that. Okay, and these lines are redundant in every method. Now my question for you guys is going to be, so if I do not want to do all these things again and again, can I put it inside a init method? Now I want you to ask a question that how can I add a init method over here? And you're going to be saying, okay, Vilas, it's very simple. You create an init method over here. So let's say public void init, and do your initialization stops over here. So I'm going to say public void init, and I'm going to be moving this much of line, Control X. These are my buddies, right? These are the friends which are like the go-to friends of mine. They should be there in the list. And also I'm going to initialize the list over here. Okay, and I'm going to be removing these things from all the other places, right? Like this. Now I can just do a Control A, Control Shift F. Look at the code that I have right now. If I'm going to zoom out a little bit, you can see that right now here is my init method, which is going to do the initialization stuff. So what I want to do right now, whenever the Spring will create the object for the my friend class, so whenever Spring will detect this component annotation and will create this particular class, what I want Spring to do, this method I want Spring to run. So when Spring is creating the object of this class, I also want Spring to run this particular method while creating the object of this class. So how I can instruct Spring to do this? I can instruct Spring to do this by writing what annotation. If you are still not sure what annotation you have to put over here, you can go to my Spring Core playlist, and inside my Spring Core playlist you'll be finding the bin lifecycle video where I have told you to write an annotation called PostConstruct, right? I can write an annotation called PostConstruct, but the PostConstruct annotation I'm not finding over here. Why is that? Because the time I have created that Spring Core tutorial series, it was 4 years back. That time this PostConstruct annotation used to be part of the Spring Framework jar itself, part of the Spring Core jar itself. But right now this PostConstruct has been moved. It has been moved out. Okay, so if you want to use this PostConstruct annotation, just because once my framework creates the object of my friend class, I also want my framework to execute this method and do some initialization stuff. And to do that, I have to add this annotation called PostConstruct, but it is by default is not coming. So I have to go to the web and I have to go to the Maven repo. Okay, and inside my Maven repository, I have to look for something called Jakarta annotation. Jakarta annotation API. Jakarta annotation API. This one. Go ahead and copy this. This is the Jakarta annotation API. Control C this. Go back to your Spring MVC application. Go to the pom.xml file. Put your annotation over here. Format this. Do a Control S. And now go to your My Friends class. It will reload the changes. Now go to your My Friends class and do a control space right now. And right now you are getting a PostConstruct annotation, which is a lifecycle annotation over here. Now what will happen? Once the object of this will be created, this init method will be automatically called by the framework. And I'm going to say over here, sys out, let's say doing some initialization stuff, doing some init stuffs. Okay. So now what will happen when Spring will create the object for this, it will run this, right? So that I don't have to repeat these things in all of my methods right now. Now I can simply do a Control S, and if you can see over here, yeah, you can see that on the log right now, doing some init stuff. So whenever the dispatcher servlet is getting created, it is trying to create the container. So dispatcher servlet will be having a container, and inside that container, whenever it is creating this object, it is automatically calling this method and doing some of the initialization stuff. And that's why you can see that in the log. Just remember that I have added that dependency inside the pom.xml file in order to get that thing work. All right, so now what I want you to do, I want you to write a simple API method to add a friend. And it's very simple, right? Now I can do what in my friends. Here I have already written this add friend method. Let me utilize this particular method. So what I want, I can go to my controller, and here I'll be creating another method. Let's say add friend. Okay, and here what I'm going to do, I'm going to be accepting a friend here. So how can I accept the friend? So in the URI only I can accept. Let's say I'm going to write a request mapping here, and let's say the request mapping, the URL structure will be, let's say /friends. Then let's say add, and then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to be getting this, okay, friend name through the URL. So you have to pass me this guy dynamically. So you have to give me like this. Let me copy this guy, Control C. Let me go to the browser, and I'm going to be saying, let's say this is my endpoint. So here you have to pass me the name. The name should be, let's say, Abhilash. Okay. Now this Abhilash will be dynamic. It can be anything, Abhilash, Abhi, Shweta, anything. So now it will hit this endpoint of friends /add /something dynamic. So we have this URL over here. So this friend name will be replaced with Abhi. Now I have to capture it. So how can I capture it? You guys know, right? This is path variable. So path variable I can use, and I want to capture this guy, and I want to bind it with a string variable. Okay, so there you go. And once I capture this friend name, I will just add it. Okay, so I can just do my friends dot add friend, and I'm gonna add this friend name over here. Okay, and once I have added the friend name, I will just do a query. So I'm gonna just do my friends dot get all friends again. So I have added one more friend to the list. So previously there were 4, right now I have added one more, so it's become 5. Okay, I'm going to return the same. So I'm going to say return, and I'm going to do a command 1 assign statement to the new local variable, and I'm going to be getting the list of my friends over here. Okay, and also here also I'm going to returning the list of friends that I have. Okay, and also this is going to be a public method. And let me restart my server. Okay, so I'm gonna right click, run on server, and let me just redeploy all my changes again to the server, and let's just see whether my API is working right now. So first of all, it is just starting my server. My initialization things has been done. So right over here, I can just write the endpoint, myapp.com friends /add/Abhilash, enter, and now I'm getting Sunil, Soumya, Priya, Soumik, and Vilas, right? I'm getting all these things. So my initialization method is working good. So right here inside my add friend method, this add friend that I have over here, this add friend is just adding the name over here, but the previously during the initialization, during the object creation, this many things has been added. The PostConstruct is the initialization method which is coming through that jar that we have added over here, through that dependency that we have added here called Jakarta Annotation API. Not only you can do initialization stuff. So let's say whenever you are stopping your server, let's say whenever your bean is going to be destroyed, when your my friends component is going to be destroyed, at the time if you want to clear this list, it's going to be very simple. You can write another lifecycle method over here like public, okay, void destroy, and it can do some cleanup stuff over here. Let's say sysout, and I'm going to say doing cleanup job. And here when the object will be destroyed, when this object will be destroyed, that time what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove everything from the list. So I'm going to just do friend list dot clear, okay, and I'm going to be annotating this one with @PreDestroy. All right, so now let's just see that in action. So let me just reload my changes. So first of all, my container is starting. Whenever my container is starting, you can see it is doing some initialization stuff because my object is getting created. And whenever the object is getting created, this particular method is running, and automatically this is happening because of this lifecycle annotation over here. And now if I'll go to my web server, and if I'll stop my web server right now, if I'll go to my server, and if I'll stop my server right now, then the dispatcher servlet will be closed. The container is also going to be closed. If the container will be closed, then the object inside the container will be destroyed. Then I also have this object here, my friends, inside the container. So if I'll stop my server, this object will be destroyed. And when the object will be destroyed, this destroy method will run and it will do some cleanup job. For an example, from this list right now, whatever I'm added, I'm cleaning it by using the list.clear method. So if this method will be executed, this thing I'll get it inside the console, right? So let me just try to stop my server. Okay, and let's just see, like, you can see right now destroying the dispatcher servlet, and it is doing some cleanup job. That means my PreDestroy is also in action. So I think it is making sense to you guys that how I'm using this PreDestroy and PostConstruct method over here. Now what you have to do, this is the assignment for you. You have to copy this my friend class and the friends controller class to your Spring Boot project. Do the same thing in Spring Boot and see, do you have to add this dependency in order to achieve the same thing whatever I have done. Copy this couple of classes to your Spring Boot project, source main Java, to this particular package. I'm not going to do it because if I'll do it, it will be very simple. You do it. You analyze it. Do you have to add this dependency explicitly inside your Spring Boot project? And if yes, then why you are adding it? If no, then how it is working automatically? Which is that jar which is bringing in this particular dependency automatically for you whenever you are using the PostConstruct and PreDestroy annotation in Spring Boot. First of all, can you use PostConstruct and PreDestroy annotation in Spring Boot? If yes, do you have to add any external jar? If you are adding, then just let me know in the comments. If you are not adding, tell me why you are not adding. Just go to the pom.xml and go to the dependency hierarchy and check if that jar is coming transitively with any other dependency. Just let me know. If that is coming, it is coming through which dependency. Do an analysis and let me know. I hope this is helpful. I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay guys, so that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to be talking about one of the most beautiful feature of the Spring Boot called the Spring Boot order configuration. Whatever we know so far, this is very, very basic. In the next video, you're going to be understanding how we'll be creating custom auto configuration file, how basically the Spring Boot auto configuration actually works. And we're going to be discussing that in the next video. Stay tuned and do subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you are liking this video. And if you are watching every video, you are not subscribing, you are not liking the videos, even if you are not disliking the video also, you have to give me feedback, right? You have to tell me what's wrong, what's right, you are liking it, you are not liking it, then only I can produce some more and more videos for you guys, right? So do encourage me for sure. I really need your encouragement. And okay, that's it. Okay, so I don't want to be emotional. Okay, all right, so I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, bye bye, take care, and happy coding.